I want to start, I think, by acknowledging the role that my former County Council colleagues, Michael Clark and Joe Queenan, have played in bringing this matter to national attention, and to Circa Crowley, who is a Sligo native, for raising this issue in the Irish Times last week. So Sonas Retirement Village, just to give you a background, Minister, is made up of 27 dwellings located in the immediate surroundings of Sonas Enniscrone nursing homes in Enniscrone, County Sligo. These homes were constructed with the express purpose of being, in the words of the original planning permission, run in conjunction with the existing Enniscrone nursing home. The name of the development, according to the Residential Tenancy Board, is Sonas Retirement Village. The houses are all single-storey dwellings laid out and equipped for occupation by people with restricted mobility, including wheelchair users. The internal and external doors, and I visited the houses myself, are wide enough to easily accommodate wheelchair, and the bungalows have wet rooms instead of traditional bathrooms. Last Friday I visited a number of the residents' bungalows, including Frank and Elizabeth. So Frank is an 88-year-old wheelchair user with dementia. Elizabeth is 84, who's Frank's wife, and she's been his carer for the past number of years. When Elizabeth and Frank moved into the retirement village, they were given to understand that each house formed part of a retirement village surrounded by the Sonas nursing home. The residents were told that they could access the service of the nursing home, such as home help, social events and so on, if required, and if and when the time came that they could seamlessly, if their health deteriorated, that they could seamlessly transition into the care of the nursing home. Elizabeth kept all the records. She showed me all the paperwork that she'd maintained over the years, including correspondence on Sonas letterheading, which indicated the Sonas bank account that the rent was to be paid into. At no time were Sonas or any other households I spoke to given any indication that the landlord was any other organisation other than Sonas. So what I'm painting here is a picture of a retirement village based around the physical presence and service of an adjacent nursing home. This was a place where the elderly and disabled tenants choose to move into, a place where they could see out and live their days together in the knowledge that their physical and social needs could be met. But this certainly transpired to be an illusion. In November last year, the occupants of 6 of the houses, all elderly or disabled, received notices of termination from BK Holdings Limited Company, who identified themselves at this stage to be the landlord of the properties. These houses, these bungalows, which are constructed with the express intention of housing elderly and disabled people, now appear to be treated as a financial asset that can be traded, sold or even vacant in order to maximise the financial return of the owners, the individual directors and the shareholders who own this Irish registered company. These eviction notices served upon vulnerable people have not been issued by a faceless multinational vulture fund, by, again, an Irish-owned company. My concern is that mass evictions across the country seem to have been triggered by the market reset clause in the recent Residential Tenancy Act. Some landlords seem to view the change in legislation as an opportunity to maximise the asset, to make more profits by evicting existing tenants, and to sell or even to sit on the properties to keep them vacant. So in the recent climate generated by the implementation of this Residential Tenancy Act, more profit to be made by an empty property by having people in it. This is never okay, and it's not acceptable. So the Residential Tenancy Act was intended to provide security, and I understand that it was good intent with 6-year tenancies. However, the guillotine in the legislation, which we had seen in both these houses, is this unintended consequence of this. So I suppose these 6 evictions are just the tip of the iceberg, and with all evictions at the moment, these tenants are effectively, they've nowhere to go. Enniscrone is like every other village and town across Ireland. There's nowhere to rent and nowhere to go. They've built their lives around the small village, and there's nowhere to go. They're 84, just to remind again, and 88. It's apparent to me that the Residential Tenancy Act has not only failed to increase security of tenants for tenure for elderly and disabled tenants living in private, is actually led now to the immediate decrease in situations like this in the security of tenure.
Thank you very much, Senator Cosgrove. Minister, you're very welcome, and you have 4 minutes there to respond to that.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. Look, first of all, at the outset, Senator Cosgrove, I don't have the exact details of this case, but you have set them out quite clearly, and you've described a picture where some of the most vulnerable people in our society have now been put in a situation where their future is uncertain. They don't know where they're going to go. You referenced people with dementia, people with mobility issues, some of the most vulnerable older people in society, and I would appeal first and foremost to those involved and the owners to have a heart here and to consider the impact that any such moves would have on these individuals because the work that you're doing with your constituents and the picture that you've painted is heartbreaking. I'm just going to outline the legislative backing behind this and the role of the RTB, and hopefully that helps. But perhaps we can go back and discuss further in terms of future other options as well. The Residential Tenancies Act, or the RTA 2004-2026, regulates the landlord-tenant relationship in the residential rental sector and sets out the rights and obligations of landlords and tenants. The Acts protect tenants and landlords of all ages, with or without a disability. The Acts apply to every dwelling that is the subject of a tenancy, subject to a limited number of exceptions. Dwellings covered by the Acts include the private rental sector, the cost rental sector, the approved housing body sector, and student-specific accommodation. The Residential Tenancies Board was established as an independent statutory body under the RTA to operate a national tenancy registration system and to facilitate the resolution of disputes between landlords and tenants. The dispute resolution services provided that the RTB is quasi-judicial, and all of its mediators, adjudicators and tribunal members have independent decision-making powers in the same way as judges have in the courts. Where there is a question as to the validity of a notice of termination, a tenant can submit a dispute for resolution with the RTB under Part 6 of the Acts. The website www.rtb.ie can be accessed for information on the RTB's dispute resolution service. Due to the quasi-judicial nature of the RTB's dispute resolution service, it would be inappropriate for me as Minister and my department to provide legal advice or to intervene in the specifics of any individual cases. Significant legislative changes have been introduced over the past number of years to enhance security of tenure for all tenants. From July 6, 2022, the Residential Tenancies Act have been amended further to enhance tenancy protections, including by providing for tenancies of unlimited duration after 6 months under tenancy without a valid notice of termination having been served, and the extension of termination notice periods where there has been no breach of obligations. The Residential Tenancies Act 2026 came into operation on the 1st of March 2026. The reform of the rental sector provides stronger protections for tenants and encourages investment in the sector through updated rent controls. In order to provide greater security of tenure for tenants, the 2026 Act provides stronger tenant protections by significantly restricting no-fault evictions for new tenancies. The existing provision for tenancies of unlimited duration is strengthened by incorporation of rolling 6-year tenancies of minimum duration. How a landlord can end any existing tenancy agreement is not impacted by the new rental changes. The stronger tenancy protections only apply to a new tenancy created on or after the 1st of March 2026, and there is no 6-year rent resetting option of 6-year rolling TMDs for pre-March 2026 tenancies. So that kind of outlines the position. But again, just to say, I really appreciate the case that you're making on behalf of your constituents. We can't necessarily intervene in terms of providing legal advice, but again, I would appeal to the owners of the properties in this instance to have regard for some of the most vulnerable people in society.
Thank you very much, Minister. Sanders, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Minister. And thank you for listening, Minister, to the real story that is behind these people. And if you'd met, you know, if you met the tenants that I've been meeting to, they're old, they're vulnerable, they're confused, and they're scared. And so I would appeal. I would appeal to the hopefully higher nature of the people that own these, but also, in the event this not happening, like, I think there has to be there has to be emergency provisions in place where the department can step in and compulsory purchase order these. Like the county councils, and I know this from being a councillor, they don't have the money. But they have the legislation. They can compulsory purchase order, but they don't have the money. And I think in situations like this, and as well that there will be resource that the county councils be looked to see, is there a breach within the Residential Tenancy Board about the sale of ownership and whether the residents were actually told that there was a new landlord. Also, I want to see that we say the sale of the nursing home was authorised by the Consumer and Competition Protection Commission, and where they say that the house is going to be part of this as well. So there's a lot more than this and meets the eye. We've seen that there's been 10,500 eviction orders been issued since June last year, and as soon as there's talk about changes to the Residential Tenancy Bill. So thank you, Minister, for listening, and I hope that we'll be able to have a further conversation about this.
Thank you very much, Senator. Minister.
Thank you, Kerr. Look, the Residential Tenancies Bill, the whole purpose of it is to do two things: to try and suppose, create an environment where we can get more units built so that there's more accommodation and we can eventually address things like homelessness and cost of rent, but also to introduce that security of tenure. But I appreciate the situation you're bringing up here is pre the legislation. I can't talk about specifics because I don't want to say or do anything that impacts or has a negative impact on the people that you're, vulnerable people that you're representing. But I will say this though, in general, where situations arise where there's a potential solution that can be arrived at with partnership from the local authority and the department, and if that's a possibility in general terms where people's security of tenure is impacted and people's lives will be changed for the worse, then I think that's a conversation that needs to have. I won't say any more than that, but in general I think the local authority and the department should have discussions to see how something like that could be addressed.